welcome. This is the Writer Studio 2026 student reading, and we are so glad that you're here. Thank you all for taking time to come and enjoy the wonderful work that you'll hear. These are students representing all the branches and the online presence that the school has, and you'll hear some really wonderful work today. It's my pleasure to welcome you. Let me just say a few words of introduction about our school. The Writer Studio was founded in 1987 by our very own Pulitzer Prize-winning poet Philip Schultz. The school offers ongoing writing workshops both in person and online. We have branches in New York City, Tucson, San Francisco, also in Italy, and I believe the Hudson Valley as well, and also a robust online presence. Under Phil's direction, we have developed our very own teaching method, which allows students the opportunity to experiment or try on a variety of narrative styles. And that unlocks each writer's limitless imagination and creativity. And what you'll hear today in their work is that combination of our narrative method and their own imaginations. You can find more information about the Writer Studio at www.writerstudio.com. And you will be able to see a recording of this on our YouTube page sometime within the next few weeks. As an extra announcement, I would like to let our community know that Phil Schultz will be reading on Tuesday, July 14th at 6 p.m. as part of the Bryant Park Poetry Reading Series. Bryant Park is in New York City. For those of you who don't know, it is on 42nd Street between 5th and, I think 6th. I think I have a typo on my, yeah, great. Between 5th and 6th. And, let's see, a few housekeeping announcements that I'd like to offer before we get started. For anyone who needs closed captioning, they are available. Just go to the bottom of your screen and look for closed captioning on. And as well, we would love to hear from you in the chat. You can leave your comments for your reader feedback in the chat. Okay, great, welcome. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first reader. Joining us all the way across the pond from Ireland is Sinéad O'Toole. Sinéad is a fiction storyteller, memoirist, and poet based in California. Born and raised in Ireland, she moved to California, where she lives with her husband and 3 children. An emerging artist, she has been a frequent and enthusiastic student at the Writer Studio for the past 3 years and is excited for her first publication. When not writing, she is either taxiing her 3 children to various activities on a yoga mat or dreaming of being in Sedona at a tea ceremony. Sinéad, we're so happy to have you. Please remember to unmute, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Francesca. I'm very grateful to you as my teacher and very grateful for this opportunity. Probably most of all, I'm grateful to the person, my friend, who suggested that 3 years ago I take a level 1 class with the Writer Studio. I have just loved my time at the Writer Studio. I love this method. I've had so much fun and I've learned so much in my time here with my fellow students, some of whom have become my friends, and my amazing teachers, Francesca, Susan Tatner, Janelle Drumright, and Nancy Connors. I owe a lot to them. Today I'm going to read 2 poems. The first was prompted by a Robert Pinsky narrator. It does include 2 lines of poetry from my favorite poems, which you will most likely recognize. And the first poem is called Homesick. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, but I only ever wanted to be tethered deeply, definitely, and firmly to the earth, and absorb and commune through the earth, through the roots, to ancestors and ancient wisdom. Longing to belong, I wander the globe with my toes rooted to home, whilst a tailwind floats me to expand and explore. My brother said he didn't know why anyone would want to go anywhere. My dead father told me the world was a far bigger place than where I was born. That's how I ended up in San Francisco almost 30 years ago, my maiden voyage to America. a welcomed immigrant to fulfill a dead man's wish, planting a seed that would unearth me. My brother's roots allowed me the branches from which to launch safely in the knowledge that all would be well and cared for in my necessary selfish absence. Today, I travel to San Francisco with my children and see names stamped on hills, flags erected, billowing and nodding to America, a declaration of ownership and identity. We believe we own the earth. When we become dust and our earthly body is filtered through bugs and beetles and given back to the earth, can we say we own it then? I already exist in a tapestry of memories in the minds of the people I left behind, connected through an invisible string like a fishing line. My mother says even a fish should learn to close its mouth. The hook is dangerous, like war and democracy, an illusion of ownership. I collect threads to weave my own flag. Two roads converged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. I split, but the river always flows to the ocean, never able to flow backwards. If home is where the heart is, mine is scattered and planted in the bodies of my children to join the 5 generations of ancestors in their DNA. Home exists in me. I will exist in memories I have little control over. Will my ashes be scattered to float on high, or in whose earth take ownership? And my second poem was inspired by the Garrett Hondo narrator and is at the moment untitled. One arm wrestles the door against the competing wind. The other cradles the bale of sticks and turf she carries to arrange like prayers in the press beside the stove. Her coat, having seen too many seasons, is worn, discoloured on one side where she heaves her load against her breast. The tin bucket clanks as it weaves and bobs in her hand, headed back outside for coal to continue her pilgrimage. The door hinges, relieved as the wind momentarily wins the battle. Blustery wind gushes in like an unwelcome in-law. She tightens her shawl around her creaking shoulders, bracing for the elements. Outside, the cows graze in the fields, meandering, munching and mulching the luscious damp grass. Raising their heads only to query the clanking bucket, they continue the rhythmic crunching and chewing. The red-breasted robin perched on the telephone wire chirps his hello whilst a magpie swoops to investigate a muddy puddle. She scans the grey sky and barren trees for a second magpie whilst waving to the first. The superstition as fierce as the biting wind, 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy. If it were June, she would pass raised beds, belching lettuce, kale, cabbage, leeks, and carrots, and drift past the rhubarb ready to be plucked for tarts. The clothesline would heave with sheets and clothes dancing in the spaces between summer showers, infused with the scent of gorse, heather, and hay. But this is January, and the beds are depraved of life. The mucky dirt, peppered with frost and decay, and the rhubarb needs the old harvesting bucket hat. Delicate white snowdrops peek from the grass verge, promising spring. Back inside, she uses an old turkey wing to scrape the ashes out of the corners of the fire before placing them in a reused shopping bag. The week's old newspaper is scanned for lost information, then crumpled and placed like a nest before stacking it like a trifle with firelighters, kindling, turf, larger sticks, and coal on top. The clove top closes with a clank and is polished until gleaming. She pauses for the angel spells, blows a kiss to the Sacred Heart on the kitchen wall, and prepares to do battle with the creaking ironing board. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the next reader. Adele Barker is a writer and academic from Tucson, Arizona. Her memoir, Not Quite Paradise, Beacon Press, 2010, recounts her experiences living in Sri Lanka during the Civil War and her return after the 2004 tsunami. Her recent nonfiction, The Long Arm of War in the Arctic, was a finalist for the Michael Steinberg Memorial Essay Prize and appears in the spring issue of Genre. Welcome, Adele. Please remember to unmute.
Thank you so much. I'll be reading today the first 2 pages from my nonfiction piece, The Long Arm of War in the Arctic, which just appeared in Genre. I worked on this piece in Tucson in Phil Ivory's advanced class and master class, so a big shout out to Phil from me. It is about my journey to the Norwegian-Russian border, high in the Arctic. I spent years in the Soviet Union, and I won't go back now, but it's this piece about standing at the border. Its remoteness is the first thing. From the air, it is the only thing. Metamorphic rock pushing against the last stands of conifer and birch along Norway's Arctic coast. Below me is a world jumping off into the sea. Human presence feels unlikely here. Yet, in this remote region where tundra and taiga vie for dominance, sits a town called Kirkenes, 7 miles from the Russian border. A bear mounted in attack pose stands guard over the baggage carousel at the tiny Kirkenes airport, daring us to pick up our luggage. I grab my duffel bag and head out into bone-chilling Arctic wind. The cold air stings. It is June 2024. Snow sits still on the mountains. I am 2,000 miles and 4 countries away from the war in Ukraine, 250 miles north of the Arctic Circle, and at the northernmost end of 124 miles of forest and rock, of taiga and tundra that bond the Arctic landscapes of Norway and Russia together. Russia, they tell me casually at the airport, is just down the road. The no big deal comment that tells you to take a right at the corner. Fiddling with the keys to the rental car and looking out onto the gray wilderness, striated in white, I feel the remoteness of this place. It is why I am here. I want no part of this war in Ukraine, and yet I have traveled to this Arctic border to measure its long arm. How far north along Russia's border must one travel to get out of war's reach? But something else has brought me here. A 40-year-old romance with the country down the road. It began decades ago with pages marked and dog-eared, a sentence in a Tolstoy novel underlined, a short story by Chekhov that landed inside my life. Love of Russia's literature brought me to the Soviet Union, first as a student in the early 1970s, later as a professor. My romance with the country, snow falling on birches, a string quartet heard from an open window as I walked in winter twilight along Moscow streets, was challenged by the jagged edges of living with what you love, which was to live in the thick of the long lines, the lack of just about everything, the aroma of KGB security, the cold concrete of daily life, the great Soviet experiment slowly going awry. The only thing not in deficit in those years was conversation, long, intimate, soulful, often laced with tea or vodka, as the country quietly pushed against its own closed doors. I drive into the gray quiet of a late Arctic morning, moving between road signs and my nostalgia for the gray Soviet past. I won't go back, not now, not during this war. not as long as the country with which I have had the 40-year-long love affair is ruled by the short man with the long arm, who was once a briefcase handler for upper echelon KGB spies in East Germany. But I will stand at the border and look over onto Russia, where memories lie deep. Maybe this is where I have always stood, somewhere on the border, even at those moments when I felt most a part of Russian culture. Maybe I have just come to do what I have always done, stand at the edge of a country that after 40 years still eludes me. A road sign points me toward the border, another toward Murmansk, Russia, 225 kilometers away. Families of reindeer on the road seem unperturbed by my car's presence. I dip down from the cold hills into flatter land, where after several miles, a forest of signs appears, warning me not to proceed further. I pull over to get a closer look. In descending order, in Norwegian, English, and Russian, they read, "No crossing the border by land, water, and air. No conversation across the border. No photographing Russian military personnel and equipment in an offending manner." "What are you doing here?" "Your documents." A tall Norwegian border guard in his late 30s appears out of nowhere, dressed in thick layers of uniform and belted with firearms. "You are not to be parking here. You are at Stoskok checkpoint. Out of car." I get out and reach into the back seat for my backpack and passport. My hands rustle and move too quickly. My signal to myself that I'm anxious or nervous. I remember long ago taking the train into the Soviet Union from Finland. Soldiers in groups, the squeaking of boots up and down the corridor, all of it would begin miles before the actual border. We sat uneasy, waiting. The official eyes of official young men moved up and down my passport, breaking hard on my face, as if for a red light, and then down again, as if I were someone else and not me. Their eyes intimidating, both of us afraid, lest I be someone else or no one at all, a ghost standing before them. Each time I arrived, a different uniformed young man, the same eyes, all of them searching for what lay beneath my legal, documented self. And now, thank you. It is my utmost pleasure to introduce another Tucsonan, one very close to my heart, Sarah Therio, who practices medicine and writes here in Tucson, Arizona, where she is an advanced student at the Writer's Studio. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Swamp Pink, Cleaver, and the Peatsmoke Journal, and was chosen for its originality of form as a finalist for Grist's ProForma contest. Thank you, Sarah, and don't forget to unmute.
Thank you so much, Adele. So I'm going to read 3 poems. The first one is called "We Wandered Lost." When our families could no longer keep us and capitalism had turned us to husks, we became the color of the earth, soiled, hides tanned and bent by the sun. We huddled next to highways, scanned hulks of metal for flesh and blood. Our teeth yellowed or grayed or gone. We waved at you, hoping for a donation. Half of your coffee, lukewarm, artificially sweet as your response, or the discards on your floorboards. We were grateful for it all. We were called bag ladies, zombies, violent, demented, our rags soured with urine, spiced with sweat. We were boogeymen trespassing, shade seekers under awnings, specters hugging our possessions like lovers. We were unloved. You mistook us for garbage, bagged and lifeless on the side of the road. We cradled the knives we wanted to shed in the bends of sleeping elbows, dreaming of softness, of humanity proffered, yet like Odin at your doorstep, we were failed. Instead, we were warned of the law, of institutions, as though we did not know the world had made us enemies, would punish us unless we moved on. With our blankets, our carts, your campaign signs we made into tarps, stolen beds designed for dogs, in the heat or cold, it was all hell. There was no God for us, the forgotten. We wandered like sheep lost. Homeless boys and girls, tramps, hobos, and vagabonds, we were unworthy, embarrassed to ask you. So we wrote on our flying signs, God loves you, and smile. Thank you. The next is a prose poem called Audit. Just before it ended, I played a game of counting. Wherever we went, I was counting all of the people who were more fun than you and me together. I passed the time counting. After it was over, I counted all of the things you did, all of the things you did for me that I could do for myself. I marveled in the mirror at my reflection for one, the two of us there staring, all dressed up. I brewed my tea strong for 7 minutes in any of my 3 favorite mugs. I painted myself a watercolor desert, an endless cacti landscape, a devastating kind of love. I packed 4 napkins in my lunchbox. On one of them, I penned a note. I kissed my wrist, left and right, and each freckle on each of my shoulders. Somewhere in the mid-20s, I lost count. Thank you. The last poem, it's like a prose poem meets flash, so I think it could go either way. It's called Watermelon Blues. This afternoon, I drove home from the grocery store with an impulse purchase, a sale-priced miniature watermelon I placed in the passenger seat. Smooth, cool, and impossibly round, it sat cradled in the curve of the backrest, yet I held it in place, cupped it with a gentle palm. Last night before bed, I massaged my arches. I assessed my tired feet. How was the toe splay? Were my shoes, the sensible work heels I'd been wearing, too narrow? A pedicure was overdue. As I drove the watermelon home, it seemed so important to keep it in place, I don't remember the actual driving. Despite its thick rind, it must have seemed fragile. My friend, a woman who joins me for pedicures, is so much my opposite. She is often smiling. She is always balanced. She tells me I overreact, but I keep the conversation friendly whenever we walk the neighborhood. We ignore the cat calls from a speeding black Camaro. We hug goodbye at my doorstep. As I carried the watermelon inside from the street, I held it at chest level, my silhouette augmented, before my grip began to slip. I was tired from the summer sun. I was tired of smiling. I was tired of not smiling. I had visions of the watermelon sagging, then splitting on the pavement. The fruit, once perfectly contained, so pretty, now a mess, garish insides exposed, staining my bare legs with red. Thank you. All right. Our next reader is Marjorie Height. Marjorie Height is a retired attorney living in Northwest Washington State. She and her adult daughter operate a small sheep dairy farm and make their own cheese. She serves on the board of the local soil conservation district, where she has learned a lot from local farmers. She's taken many classes from the writer's studio, but is still trying to exercise the pedantic lawyer from her writing. Welcome, Marjorie, and don't forget to unmute.
Thank you, Sarah. I've been taking essay from Gail Ford for many, many years, and she and my supportive classmates have helped me a lot. I'm calling this one In Praise of Milk. I never thought of myself as food. Enlarged as I was to house and nurture a fetus, it was the baby I was thinking about, not the milk. Milk from a cow, milk from a goat. We use it to feed our families and ourselves. It comes in a bottle or a carton. It sits in the dairy case and then the refrigerator until it sits on the table. It doesn't come for our own bodies. But when my baby was born, milk did come from my body. In the low light of the hospital room, the wrenching labor over and forgotten, the nurse held my baby out to me, allowing me to cradle her and put her to the breast. A little practice sucking, and then we went home. However, at home she woke crying, and I hurried to pick her up. I put her to my breast, and she sucked and pulled away, sucked and pulled away. Each time it was a searing attachment and a burning release. I could hardly stand the pain. Soon we were both crying. It was not what I expected. Earth Mother was my anticipated role, natural and nurturing, easy, playful, affectionate, not this anxious, agonizing dance. They told us nursing a baby was important, and failure to nurse may leave a baby vulnerable and weak. Was it supposed to be this hard? Finally, my heart in my mouth, I called La Leche League, which is a bunch of moms in favor of breastfeeding. A calm, reassuring voice on the phone asked me to describe what was happening. She must have heard the guilt in my voice. So with a gentle firmness, she explained that there was plenty of milk. Actually, the milk was coming too rapidly, but the baby couldn't swallow it all, and that is why she released her suck. Try lying on your side. From then on, nursing the baby was transformed into an almost mystical reunion of mother and baby, together in intimate connection as we had been before the birth. It was feeding and blending spirits and bodies together. But as my daughter grew up and became more and more her own person, nursing faded from her memory. So I forgot about nursing too, until I decided on raising dairy sheep. I was planning on using the milk to make cheese, yet in my mind I skimmed over the time between birth and milking. Lambs would be born and the milk would flow. I almost forgot that the lambs would also nurse from their mothers. But the sheep would not let me forget. Most ewes seem to like breeding and having lambs. However, by the time labor begins, the ewes are grossly uncomfortable and groan as they lie down or get up. The lambs arrive one by one, sure that the udder has something for them, but not sure where it is. Nosing the ewe's tail and belly, sometimes finding a hanging bit of wool to suck on, the lambs search out the teats. This can take quite a while, but they stick at it. The milk-body connection that results creates a frantic certainty in the lambs and their mothers that they belong together, something very difficult to ignore amidst all the bahs and pleas. But once I start milking the ewes, the milk itself takes center stage. The lambs still nurse, but they are older now, and my use of the milk becomes primary. I can take this milk and make it into ice cream with little more than freezing temperature and churning. Solid, creamy, smooth, a new food. Or I can heat the milk with a little vinegar, drain it in cheesecloth, salt it, and there it is, ricotta. Meaty, crumbly, moist, irresistible all by itself. An almost instant cheese. Add an acidophilus blend to milk that has been heated, then cooled, leave it to set, and now you have yogurt. Midway between liquid and solid, yogurt from sheep's milk is thick, stick to your ribs, satisfying. Add a little fruit, and it's a meal. As if that weren't enough, milk holds within itself 100 cheeses. Fresh cheeses, soft cheeses, young cheeses, aged cheeses, cheeses with holes, cheeses in olive oil. Hidden in the milk are 1,000 variations that can be cajoled with heat, pressure, salt brain, minute amounts of culture into a new form. Sort of like a runway model, the milk wears a new outfit at every turn. An evening gown, a pair of hipster overalls, a power suit. But that isn't quite the right metaphor. The milk is allowed only one transformation to cheese out of endless possibilities. The mystery of a sculpture becoming a human being, the miracle of water into wine. Milk is like one of these metamorphoses when it becomes cheese. It doesn't change and change again. A pail of sheep's milk is more like an Aladdin's lamp with just one wish. What will it be? Brie, Camembert, or Stilton? Gouda, Manchego, or cheddar? Mozzarella? Feta? The magic is in the milk. My daughter is grown now. Even if I recall nursing her fondly, she doesn't remember a thing about it. There still is a bond between mother and child that is rooted in those moments when I was food for her. Moreover, she knows how to milk sheep, and that expertise served her well in the grassy Mongolian steppe, where she was allowed to milk horses to make the precious traditional drink of fermented mare's milk. Her world is wide, but she has an unusual connection to those nomadic pastoral peoples through milking. As for me, having been both the milker and the milked, I marvel at it. Milk is unique and universal. It comes from the link between mothers and offspring. It embodies possibility, and it feeds my soul. So now I get to introduce Judy Scheck. She splits her time between Croton-on-Hudson, New York, and Cape Rozier, Maine, where she exhibits regularly as a member of the Deer Isle Artists Association. After a long career as an elementary art teacher, she now works primarily in multimedia collage. Her current explorations into writing are proving the two art practices to be remarkably similar, both exciting and challenging. Okay, Judy, take it away. Don't forget to unmute.
Thank you, Marjorie. I just want to say thank you very much to this school and to Nancy Matsunaga. It's been an incredible few years for me. I'm going to read 3 poems. First is Cousins. The photograph, a cousin lineup, organized in descending order, has faded some. The grass, once green, has browned, as summer's will. 13 of us, some luckier than others, are standing still at this moment in 1959. The sunset shines silver behind the detached garage, cloud cover welcome in the July heat. I'm the smallest, far right, gripping my cousin Paul's hand as instructed, maybe to keep him from running. He's got one untied sneaker foot atop the other, age 4, glaring at the drunken uncle clicking the camera shutter. Paul was born angry until his gift from the music god showed itself. He punched. While piano keys waited for his touch to free them, he yelled. Our final annual cousin visit was a lakeside week where the grown-ups drank scotch. The mosquitoes took no prisoners, and Paul, then 11, cursed at his parents, disobeyed them, never brushed his teeth, and smoked cigarettes. I developed an interest in the night sky just to escape the shouting and shock of it. Years lurched by. We flew to our grandfather's funeral. Paul, now 15, with a French-Canadian afro, lived in the basement with his piano and a fat book of drug contacts. Even the decorative fishing net his mom had tacked on the wall couldn't hold him. Paul improvised on piano, pounding, then whispering the notes. They spoke, and we listened. My little brother Donnie took up piano as soon as we flew back home, where he'd follow the same beautiful demons, the ones that seek and destroy only a chosen few, with their sublimely aching moments of perfection, frightening descents, then their sly, inescapable invitations to climb again. In the photograph, infant Donnie wriggles in my teenage sister's arms, his hair shimmering like the angel he became too soon. Paul smoldered even at 4. Of the hand he held, my hand, can still feel the heat, even in his long absence. And the next poem is an elegy for Donnie. I've delayed this project for years. Photos are culled, arranged by decade, each labeled on the back with soft, shiny pencil, ready to be affixed to thick black photo book pages. But today, my little brother leaps out of the folders. He's facing our old house in black and white, jumping, just jumping. His slim teenager arms are raised above his head in a triumphant V. Cutoffs hemmed by mom. His long bangs just deciding which way to go. Up, that's the way he's going. Higher, I can tell. The picture catches him on his ascent, long before he knew he'd have to come down. Knees bent, his sneakers a joyous blur above the gray asphalt, far over the black tar bubbles we'd burst with twigs in August's heat. His left hand is almost making a fist just to gain momentum. I can't put him back in the folder. From now on, his right hand will wave to me from the refrigerator door. My little brother won't go into my photo album. Too many ghosts in there. No little sticky gold corners or spidery white captions will ever contain him. He's jumping for joy. And one more poem. Red Hook Garden. Look down. Watch your step. The concrete stairs cracked apart. Now look up, look around as Thomas leads us into his backyard. The air reeks of traffic exhaust. He spreads his arms in a slow spin with a grin, his head bobbing. Look! He created this other world, these elephant ears that tower overhead, their crimson stalks narrowing into veins, graceful tributaries feeding neon green leaves, bright faces upturned in the sun. Fountain grass, comically tall and stippled with ivory, nearly hides the neighboring forlorn row houses, missing bricks like lost teeth. We barely see the huge rusted containers nearby as they wait for their ships to come in. Turn toward the silver lace vine, alive with bees, its sweet scent a gaggle of grandmas. Thomas has donned his triangle straw hat. Look, he's in the Mexican sunflowers, twice his height, pulling their velvet leaves to his lips. Now he's standing on 2 stolen bodega milk crates, singing loud enough to wake the dead gangsters sunk in the Gowanus Canal in their cement overshoes. Dahlias big as dinner plates smile their lemon smiles. We smile too, stuffing our mouths with silk and nasturtium blossoms. Peppery. Serene Julia's watchful under her souvenir sombrero, wiping Thomas's tequila bottle and passing it on. Morning glories revel, spiraling up the chain link fence, their moonflower brethren coiled tight till evening. Thomas has begun to sway, pulling Julia to her feet for a tango through the speckled thigh-high hosta. He's plucked some Asiatic lilies now, dusting their saffron pollen over us, anointing us with a deep and suddenly frightening bow. And now I have the pleasure to present Jennifer Nelson. Jennifer Nelson's a multifaceted creative based in Los Angeles, where she works as a writer and editor, food stylist, and freelance branding consultant for small businesses. She has contributed nonfiction writing to Brooklyn Magazine and Gothamist, among others. A longtime student of the writer's studio, she's working on her first novel. Take it away, Jennifer, and please remember to unmute.
Thank you so much, Judy. That was wonderful. Today, I'm sharing 2 excerpts from an untitled project that I've been working on in Mark Peterson's class. I want to shout out my amazing teacher. I'm going to start with an introduction and then sort of segue into an excerpt that comes a little later in the piece. Having already made this drive from Los Angeles to New York in all 4 seasons, we agree fall is the most ideal because the weather will be mild the entire way. No blinding snow flurries in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains of New Mexico. No tornado sirens in Oklahoma, nor flash flood alerts in the Midwest. No stifling heat, little to no humidity. It would almost feel like a leisurely vacation if we weren't heading to New York for the sole purpose of emptying out Brian's mother's home of more than 40 years. It's been sitting mostly unused since she moved into memory care 3 years ago. I say mostly because we stay there on long visits several times a year. We were just there this summer, and when we brought Mom home for a visit, she didn't know where she was. It was no longer her home for us to keep. It's not accurate to call it his childhood home. That house was gone before we met, a victim of his parents' divorce and downsizing. Still, it's the home he had through high school and on breaks from college. Both his kids grew up visiting their grandmother there, crawling across the lawn in the backyard. Brian's mom was a legendary entertainer, and she had table linens, serving platters, and decorative glassware for every holiday imaginable. Framed photos of backyard barbecues, birthday parties, Post-church socials and ladies' nights overwhelm the bright yellow walls of the finished basement turned rec room. Photos that didn't make the frames are organized in hundreds of photo albums that are arranged chronologically on the bookshelf on the far wall. Pull one out at random and you'll see her on safari in Africa, on the beach in Jamaica, on a family trip to Taipei. She has had an immense life, and her home is a reflection of that. We haven't even left LA when I say we should come up with a plan of attack. Our plan up to this point has been no plan. Last summer, there was a yard sale, but even then, we hadn't planned to sell the house, so it was more of an exercise in tchotchke removal than an earnest effort to empty it. When a neighbor tried to haggle over the price of a round wooden serving tray, I wasn't as generous as I should have been. And why? I'm not ready to talk about it, Brian says. We've hit traffic on the 60, and I watch him watching the oncoming traffic in the rearview mirror before switching lanes. Just rent a dumpster and pay people to throw everything away. I'm on the phone with my brother, and I wince as though he can see me. You don't understand, I try to explain to him. I have to honor her life. We do our sibling dance of agreeing, then disagreeing, then changing the subject, and later I'll tell my husband what he already knows, that my brother will be of no use when our parents die. He'll respond with some variation of a running bit we have about siblings and him not having any. We'll laugh. Before we hang up, my brother tells me to call when we get there. He doesn't understand, I think, because we haven't had to do this yet. But there is something else, something I can't name because I don't yet know it. My brother doesn't understand in part because we are different. He also doesn't understand because we had a very different kind of mother. The other house. I can picture my childhood home without looking it up on Google Street View, but I find myself doing just that more often these days. We haven't lived there for 35 years, which is one of the reasons I'm always surprised it looks so much like my memories. The current owners aren't as fastidious as my parents. My father would sooner die than have his trash bins visible from the street and in anything less than tip-top order. In the most recent capture, dated July 2024, you can see the trash bins that live on the far right side of the house and also some garbage. The current owners have a speedboat, and it's covered in a dusty blue tarp, parked in front of said trash bins, on a patch of pavement that wasn't there in the 1980s. I remember that particular piece of yard was mounded, with a tree at the center. The only time in my life I've been stung by a bee was under that now-felled tree. Beyond the garbage cans is a low row of arborvitae separating the far side of the house from the neighbor. I know, too, that there's a fence that's out of view. I can smell the wood and feel the slivers left in my fingers from when my brother and I would spy through the cracks at our friend Brandon, who lived next door. From the top of our swing set in the backyard, we had a better view of Brandon's yard, and if we swung high enough, we could peep into the yard of the glamorous couple who lived behind us. At some point, the house got solar, which I applaud, but again, my parents would never. You almost miss it behind all the trees they've planted, which lends an air of privacy to the corner lot. During my childhood, I called 2 of the 4 bedrooms mine. When I was younger, my window faced the front of the house, and I'm guessing by the large picture window that's been installed, they now use that room for an office or maybe a craft room. I doubt there's a bed to tuck my feet into so Snuffleupagus doesn't pull me into the Muppet underworld. He never did stop trying. I remember standing on my bed, backing up to the headboard against the wall, and running to jump to the end, the distance to the hallway. I'd land with a thud on the milk chocolate carpet, rug burns on my knees. Later, when my brother and I swapped rooms, I tacked pages from Sports Illustrated over my pink floral wallpaper. Jackie Joyner Kersee, Flojo, Carl Lewis. I ran fast. And the one time I snuck out of the house, I proved it by making it to my best friend's house a quarter-mile up the road before Dad got there by car. There's a fence that blocks that window now from the road. That would have slowed me down. I can still see the navy floral wallpaper in the family room, the heavy wooden coffee table where my parents would sometimes let my brother and me eat dinner, the den off the family room where we were the first house on the block to keep a computer. My brother and I would shut ourselves inside that room and play Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego and the Oregon Trail. Later, we would stay up all night watching MTV. I look at the Google Street View, zooming in and out. I take a lap around the cul-de-sac like I used to on my bike. I know the old neighbors are gone. A few of them left before we did. Others I heard about from my dad, who was always good at keeping up. My mom less so. She left my dad around the time we moved to our new house on the other side of town. What came next isn't a blur, per se. I can probably piece the moves together if I have to. But I can't recall the houses. There were too many of them, and none of them were truly home. Thank you. It is my honor to next introduce Preston Fordstrom. Preston is a cell biologist, musician, and writer based in San Francisco who has taken writer studio courses over the past 4 years. His work in science, sound, prose, and poetry is drawn to difficult material, harsh realities, and the strange forms that emerge under pressure. He has been published in Bending Genres and numerous scientific journals, including Scientific Reports. Preston, it's all yours. Don't forget to unmute.
Thanks, Jennifer. Very delighted to be part of the Writer's Studio and part of this reading today. And I'll be reading for you 3 short prose poems that were written this year. The first piece is titled Heartless. The battered hearts ran away. They left their bodies behind, and their minds too. They got tattoos and found love on makeshift mattresses, smashed windows and sought revenge, popped pills, burned meth, guzzled booze, screamed at the wind, and peddled prophecies on the corner. Unclothed and disobedient, the hearts reeked of piss and vomit and slid along the concrete, leaking oily blood onto benches and sidewalks. Dust, splinters, and leaves caked their meat. Sores oozed rancid pus. Some hearts disappeared, incarcerated for theft, drug use, vagrancy, or assault. Others were strapped to gurneys, sedated, assigned wristbands, entered into charts, and wheeled through locked doors. Judges, wardens, orderlies, and psychiatrists whispered, then signed orders for restraints, medications, transfers, and discharge. Other hearts built shanties of boxes and tarps, or pushed shopping carts, trawling gutters, dumpsters, and ashtrays. Their people back home had stopped chewing their nails, stopped waiting for a knock, a phone call, or an email. It was normal to step over 4 or 5 hearts on the way to the corner store. A heart flopping arrhythmically on the sidewalk was an obstacle, no different from a puddle or a pile of feces. People called them hazards, addicts, head cases, thieves, deadbeats, and bums. People crossed the street and checked their shoes, arriving at the store with clean hands. A human heart can beat more than 3 billion times before death. Arrests, admissions, discharges, violations, and deaths can also be counted. Hearts can be transplanted, carried in coolers, rushed from helicopters, and sutured into waiting bodies. In death, the coroner records personal data, time, date, location, and proximate cause. There is no form to note the moment or reason a heart slipped loose, leaving the body, leaving the mind, battered, dragging its bloody mass toward the street. The second piece is titled 5150. Empty vodka bottles fill the bathroom and litter the floor around the sofa. The pills are on the end table, a prescription for back pain. I swallow a handful, so many I have to chew them. I close my eyes. My heart is slowing, skipping beats, stumbling. I cry out and my wife dials 911. In the ER, everyone keeps saying, suicide. I want to correct them, but can't coordinate my mouth. My wife sits sobbing. Tubes and wires snake out in every direction, some puncturing, some monitoring. Tethered, I stare at the yellow ceiling and watch it melt into visions, abominations, then count shuffled footsteps in the hall, each moment marked by the steady punctate bleat of my heart monitor. Coherent speech returns. They still say suicide. A second ambulance takes me 2 hours north to Woodland Memorial Hospital. In the behavioral health unit, an orderly hands me a disposable gown and says I can keep only my underwear. I don't like how he smells of cigarettes and cheap coffee. I don't like the sterile air on my back. I don't like being supervised in the shower, everyone's modesty spilling out around me. My roommate is 6'2" and so thin he looks like a skeleton. He keeps asking if I am Christian. Eventually, I lie and say I am. He says he wants to die. He won't eat, so they feed him through a port in his gut. During the night, he tells me to roll over because I'm snoring. I don't want those to be his last words. I don't want to be part of his death. I look across at him. Even though I am not a Christian, I pray for both of us. And the last piece is titled, So You Know the Way Home. Yes, here we are, the three of us on a late August Sunday, unfolding ourselves from the Chevy, road weary, breathing in the campus air, with 4,439 miles vetted, so you will know the way home. You, gazing up at Gillette House, leaning forward but clutching your mother's arm. Christmas morning flashing in your smile, recital nerves in your hands, and France still in your legs. What 15-year-old agrees to hike across a country 20 kilometers a day with her mother, no less? And you, walking us through the living room with its piano and swollen sofas, past the dining hall's coffee and toast warmth, and upstairs to the third floor, where you open the door and say, "This is my room." And you fill the walls with mushrooms and flowers, set your Korg record player on the bookshelf, rest your stuffed sea otter on a pillow, and tack up the picture of us on the Dollywood roller coaster. And then, your mother and I are back in the Chevy, back on the road, with candy wrappers in the back seat and your Stanley thermos forgotten in the footwell. Not touching the radio, not speaking, making way for the silence to finish ringing out. Yes, we play the road trip back in our heads, melting in the Martian landscapes of Death Valley, eating blue corn fry bread in Kayenta and steaks in Amarillo, having tea with the Peabody Ducks in Memphis, sleeping in a rail car in Chattanooga, foot stomping to bluegrass at the Floyd Country Store, and yes, your absence riding next to us in silent conversation all the way home. All right, thank you. And up next, we have Seema Belmar. She is a Bay Area-based writer and educator who teaches writing in the Department of Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies at UC Berkeley. Her scholarly writing has appeared in the Journal of Dance and Somatic Practices, Performance Matters, La Ventura, and the Oxford Handbook of Screen Dance Studies. Her dance criticism has been published in the San Francisco Bay Guardian, the Oakland Tribune, Dance Magazine, In Dance, the Brooklyn Rail, and in several arts catalogs. She is the creator and host of the podcast The Seema Show and the ODC podcast Dancecast. She is working on her first novel. Take it away, Seema, and don't forget to unmute.
Thank you, Preston. I wanted to just thank Maria Kerr for turning me on to the Writer Studio, and to Gail Ford, first teacher, and Kathy Jacobson, current teacher for all of this. Okay, let me get the page. I'm going to read an excerpt of this novel. And yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Okay. I feel bad for my husband, for real. If you met my husband, you might feel bad for him too, but you'd most likely feel worse for me. If I said something to you about him, something like, I pity the man, you'd definitely respond by saying something chastising, like, that's a terrible thing to say. You'd be right, of course, but I don't care. I'm right all the time about my friends' soul-sucking marriages, or their snotty, mediocre teenagers, or the fact that their politics put them on the wrong side of history, or their susceptibility to wellness grifts. But I've learned that I know, I shouldn't talk about him that way, is the wiser retort if I'm interested in preserving a friendship. Then fuck off, he's my husband, you don't have to live with him, I do, so I can say whatever the fuck I want about his sorry ass. It's too risky to lash out, and we all know it. Because if I said, no, really, he has no job, he has no friends, my friend might start giving me advice, for example, and it might be very sound advice, and she would never be invited to our house for dinner and Cards Against Humanity again. Furthermore, and this is the point, I'm never going to leave him. I'm never going to leave him because I feel bad for him. And although you should feel bad for me for being stuck married to a man I feel bad for, you should definitely, without a doubt, keep your trap shut about it the next time I mention it. But just because I feel bad for my husband doesn't mean I haven't spent years fantasizing about the myriad ways he could die. He's a smoker, so there's always lung cancer or heart attack or stroke. He has road rage, so he could wind up flipping his car while chasing the person who cut him off on the freeway. He could eat a very bad mussel or fall off a ladder or have an aneurysm or choke on a cocoa-dusted almond. I feel bad about myself for having these thoughts and take comfort in the fact that they're just thoughts. I used to wish my mother dead all the time, particularly in my 20s. When the guilt became overwhelming and I finally agreed to lie down on my therapist's couch, a move that unleashed my id in quite generative ways, I confessed the homicidal thoughts whenever I saw my mother. My therapist said, you know, you can think whatever you want. You're not going to actually kill her, are you? Liberation! Find me a nurse to dip into a non-consensual kiss like a sailor on VJ Day. The next time I found myself sitting across from my mother at Lundy's seafood restaurant in Sheepshead Bay, I thought the following thoughts. 1. I could jab this lobster fork in your jugular. 2. I could strangle you with the strings of this lobster bib. 3. I could throw this scalding melted butter in your face. The pink and white flesh of a Maine lobster never tasted so good. I wouldn't actually kill my husband either, because if I killed him, I would definitely get caught, and once caught, spend the rest of my life in jail, and what good would that do me? Then my daughters wouldn't have any parents, and the adult daughter would have to become the tween daughter's guardian, and that wouldn't work because they still fight over who ate the last piece of cake. And it's not like I could argue that I murdered my husband in self-defense. Officer, I had no choice. He was trying to kill me with his sleep sounds and the way his pinky toe always managed to find my ankle, making it impossible for me to sleep, and everyone knows your life expectancy decreases if you don't get enough sleep. A friend, maybe that same friend who's no longer invited to dinner and now doesn't care because the whole point of coming to dinner at my house is to eat my husband's meatballs and now he's dead, might suggest I plead insanity from all the sleep deprivation, you know, but any jury worth its salt would concur that it's perfectly rational to murder someone you'll never leave because you love them. Did I forget to mention that I love my husband? Well, I do, because I'm a multitasker. I can love him and feel sorry for him and want him dead all at the same time. It's a talent, I know, but I've worked hard at it too, way more than 10,000 hours and still counting. Still, sometimes I think about calling ice on my husband. I got that far into the sentence and cringed because one should not make light of ice unless one is a writer for South Park, and because the fate of someone taken away by ice is unclear, and that lack of clarity will keep me up all night, defeating the purpose of getting a full night's sleep. Anyway, sometimes I think about calling ICE because my husband is not an American citizen. He only has a green card, and I believe it is a somewhat kinder fantasy than the death wishes I used to have before Trump's second rise to power. Sometimes in my ICE fantasy, they come to the house and I tell my husband to hide in the basement and righteously demand that the vigilantes slip a warrant under the door, and then, when they fail to do so, tell them to fuck off through the peephole, which on our door is a vintage speakeasy peephole that affords the eye no protection whatsoever from a vigilante with a #2 pencil at the ready. Sometimes in my ICE fantasy, I let my husband answer the door and conveniently forget to pass him a Know Your Rights card. And even though he hasn't done anything illegal, he is a registered communist in Italy and has said pro-Palestine things at dinner, so that would probably be enough to have him zip-tied. It's sort of cruel and it's sort of funny because, as I've already pointed out, I love my husband. He's a generous man and he makes the best meatballs, combining ground beef and ground pork and breadcrumbs he makes himself out of stale Acme bread. It's not easy to find a man who makes his own breadcrumbs and who is also a passionate advocate for the most oppressed among us, for example, Neapolitans, especially the soccer players who do not have to be Neapolitan themselves. Diego Maradona, who hailed from Argentina, played for Napoli from 1984 to 1991, but he remains their native son. If you ever visit Naples, I recommend a Maradona walking tour to visit landmarks like the Maradona mural in the Spanish Quarter and shop for terracotta Maradona figurines in Via San Gregorio Armeno. My husband owns 5 Diego Maradona emblazoned t-shirts that he never wears and that no one is allowed to borrow. His generosity knows some limits. Oh, the soccer, what Italians call calcio, which is also the word for kick because Italians can be very literal. Do you remember the movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind? The Italians translated that bit of titular poetry into If you leave me, I'll delete you. On any given Saturday or Sunday, I am awakened not by the smell of fresh brewed espresso or the shriek of steaming milk or a neck-nuzzled buongiorno or even a rote ciao bella, but by a booming litany of Neapolitan swear words that roughly translate to, you cuckold, you dirty smelly dickhead, you stupid toilet, your mother is a blowjob giving whore, say hi to your sister for me, take it up the ass, may you and all your relatives bleed to death, go to bed. This is what watching soccer does to my husband. It boils his blood. They say, and by they, I mean the Neapolitans themselves, that Neapolitans are predisposed to blood boiling because they grow up in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius. Typical Neapolitans blaming an inanimate, albeit active object for their personality tics. But I shouldn't generalize. I should only speak about my husband, who is absolutely a big fat blamer, whose blood boils all day long, and whose average vocal decibel level falls somewhere between lawnmower and pneumatic drill. Yes, he has anger issues, and it turns out, especially in the early days of courtship, when your husband is just your boyfriend and you're on his turf where you don't speak the language, anger can be hot. Thanks. Okay, now introducing Jeff Aaron. Jeff lives in New York City. His poetry has appeared in the Examine Life, Tiny Seed Literary Journal, and Killing the Buddha. He is a co-founder of Global Action for Mental Health and directs outreach for the Global Play Brigade, a network of artists, performers, health practitioners, and educators across 105 countries. Welcome, Jeff, and don't forget to unmute.
Thank you, Seema. I want to say thank you to my teachers and the extraordinary students. I'm going to read 3 poems. The first, To My Stent, My Heart, and Being 78, after Kenneth Koch. All of us here together, you, my stent, metallic tenant, little architect of flow, you, my heart, old reliable red drummer still keeping time even after the bridge collapsed, and you, being 78. I never imagined we'd be roommates, but here we are sharing pills and what's left. This has been the year of repairs. Prostate cancer evicted, rotator cuff rewired, tennis elbow massaged and hanging on, arthritis slow and unglamorous, and me taking a daily dose of meds so the rest of me won't reject the hardware. At Mount Sinai again, back up the mountain, my alma mater of ailments, more than 50 years since surgery for a brain tumor, and this year, prostatectomy, another part of me removed. And my stent, my passport to the next breath. If salvation had a frequent flyer plan, I'd be platinum. Now, cardiac rehab, small republic of resilience, twice a week congregation. We row, we walk, we wheeze, we lift, we laugh. An orchestra, each of us slightly out of tune, but playing anyway. So what do the 3 of you make of being here all together? My heart says, don't make me sound noble. My stent whispers, don't make me the hero. And being 78 shrugs, make us sound human, that's enough. So I do, because what else is my poetry for? My remixed, repaired, still growing self? You 3, unlikely, persistent, have made this year a strange rehearsal for more life. My next poem is called Talking to Bertolt Brecht. It was a dream I had last night. In a bombed out opera house, sandbags for seats, water leaking from the ceiling, Brecht, wearing a worker's flat cap, shirt damp at the collar, a half-smoked Havana hanging from his lips, was waiting for me. You look tired, he said. You look dead, I said. We had known each other in the way that people do who don't speak often, but carry each other like a tool. A light snapped on. A child was standing downstage with a mop and a mask. You're still writing, Brecht said to me, like beauty can save anyone. He motioned toward the child. Write what she can use when you're not here. Anything else is decoration. I said nothing. Brecht flicked ash on the floor. Art isn't balm, he said. It's warning, a weapon. It's also a witness, I said. He didn't answer. He just turned on the radio, static, then turned it off. Witness too, he said, but only if it gets heard. The third and final poem. For Nancy, after the philosopher Kurt Gödel. And I'm thinking, Nancy, about which rug, the Moroccan with its deep reds, the saffron, the small blue geometrics, or the jute. We have been living inside that question for a decade, maybe more, and I no longer think it's indecision. I think we can't step outside the life we're living to see which one completes it. A system rich enough to be interesting contains true things it cannot prove from within. And we are inside it, Nancy. We are the system, and the rug won't decide. And Heisenberg, who said, the more precisely you fix a thing, the less you can know about where it's going. And every time we close in on the rug, something else slides loose. The lamp, the print on the floor leaning against the bedroom wall, like a guest who has stopped meaning to leave. The nail in the living room with nothing on it, optimistic and bare. You cannot fix position and momentum simultaneously. This is not a character flaw. This is physics. And Bohr told Einstein to stop telling God what to do. And I think about that, about the things we keep telling the world to do, the world not doing them. And Schrödinger, who proposed the cat to show the absurdity of his own equations, and then said of the whole theory, I do not like it, and I am sorry I had anything to do with it. There are boxes downstairs I haven't opened in 20 years, full of letters from people who loved me extravagantly and then left anyway. The letters, not knowing this, still in the middle of loving me. I haven't opened them, not because I don't know what's inside, but because I'm afraid of what opens in me when I do, maybe more dead than alive. And the not opening is a position, and the mystery is what keeps me going. My mother's ashes are downstairs too, waiting to go in the ground next to my father. I'll do it this spring. I don't believe in any of this, but I think she's lonely, which is not a provable proposition and is absolutely true, which may be what Gödel meant or not. Wittgenstein said, whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent. My love for you will not be silent. Nancy, in this poem, you have a dog, like the small round one we saw on our walk last night, the one that is basically an ottoman with legs, barely, the one that stopped for you as much as you stopped for it. We can't, I know, the traveling, the allergies, all the sensible reasons. Inside this unverifiable system that contains us both, going forward, knees knocking. And isn't that something? my gift that lives only in a poem and asks for nothing except that you stop for it, which you always do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Those were 3 lovely poems. Thank you to all of our readers. Thank you, Sinead. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Adele. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Preston. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Seema. Thank you, Marjorie. And thank you, Jeff. We've really enjoyed your work. Thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you to our audience. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your lovely comments of support and encouragement, admiration, appreciation. We'll take just a few minutes to read those notes. And if I can do this right, I'm going to bring all our readers to the screen so we can applaud one another. Hello, hello. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As I said, this recording will be available on our YouTube page sometime before the end of the summer, but in the meantime, we have all of our other readings there as well, our student readings, our faculty readings, our pushcart readings, lots of exciting things there for you to check out. www.writerstudio.com is where you can find more information about our school, about our classes. We're just still reading your lovely messages. You can keep them coming. Wonderful. All right, friends. Thank you all so very much for being here. Take good care of yourselves. Yes, I agree, Phil. Absolutely. All right. Thanks all for being here. Go out and have a wonderful afternoon. Good night. Thank you.